As a recruiter, a big part of my work is doing interviews and speaking with candidates about their interview process. And one question in particular that I find that a lot of people struggle to answer and struggle to approach the answer the best way possible is around that, why are you leaving your current company? Okay. You mainly get asked this question, I would say, more so in screening calls. And I feel like in screening calls, it's a lot more important to lay that foundation as early as possible and be as straightforward as possible. However, there are a lot of people that overcomplicate this answer, and taking this answer around the wrong route can rule you out of that process nice and early without you even realizing what you did wrong. So, in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about this answer a little bit more, what to do, what not to do, etc. So, the core lesson of today, when you're answering this question of why are you leaving your current company, whether that is a screening question or an interview question, you need to be turning the negative into a positive. Okay, so it is extremely important that when you're answering this question, you do not say anything negative about your company. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So, for myself, I spent 6 months working in a recruitment agency from June to December. Okay. Once it hit about November, I wasn't happy there. I knew that, if I wanted to progress my career in recruitment, I knew it wasn't going to be at that place in that environment. Okay. It was a very small company. I felt like, I wasn't getting the best proper official training. And I also just felt like I wasn't very important on a day to day basis. Okay. I felt like it wasn't the environment for me to learn. I felt like it wasn't the environment for me to grow. I knew I loved the recruitment. I just wanted an environment because I was also still starting. I was still very new in recruitment. I wanted an environment that's going to help me learn and grow effectively and grow slowly but surely and turn me into the best professional possible in the industry when that time is right. I was, very willing to put the work in and whatnot. It was just a matter of being rewarded with the right opportunities and the right learnings. And I didn't feel like that was necessarily going to happen at where I used to be. So, even just hearing all of that, if you were to be very honest with me, you may be thinking either one of two things. One, that sounds extremely negative, or two, I really understand what he's saying. The problem is, though, is that when you are a recruiter or a hiring manager, you need to be evaluating risks as much as possible. So a big problem is that if I gave that answer on a screening call or a job interview, people would look at me as a little bit of a risk. Okay. So reason being is that if I talk too negatively about my current company, if I come across and I make it sound like I'm a victim or things along these lines, whilst it could genuinely definitely be true, okay, no one's going to dispute that. The problem is that people will look at you as a risk. At the end of the day, companies will hire on predictability. Okay, companies want to feel like they're getting the safe hire. Okay, doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the best. They want the guy with no dramas and no stresses. Okay, so if you come across as too negative about your current environment or your current company, they may be thinking to themselves, what's going to stop them from repeating those same behaviors here? What if this isn't the truth? And let's say this person's actually a big problem at his current company. Okay. You see how that now gets them thinking about something that, you're genuinely honest about is a problem, but they may see that in a negative light. Okay. So you want to try to reframe all the negatives now and put it into a positive. Okay. So focus on that idea that, you want to learn as much as possible because you are extremely passionate about the job that you do. Okay. But you don't have to talk about the part where you don't feel like your company is doing that as best as possible. You can obviously mention it, but you don't want to make it the core of your point. Okay. So a big part of what you're going to be doing moving forward is, highlighting the necessities of what you want to do and highlighting, what's important to you in order to prosper in a new environment and turn those negatives into positives in the way that you're delivering your responses for the recruiter to understand. Okay. Why is this actually important? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to come across as a liability. Okay. If you speak too negatively about your company or your experience at the company, as I said before, they're going to look at you as a risk. Okay. And even if you feel like, yeah, but like where I was right now, like I'm being serious, like, it was really bad. I couldn't learn. I wasn't happy, blah, blah, blah. 100%, 1000%. I understand, you know. I felt that way at past companies. I've dealt with candidates who feel the same way. It's very, very normal, okay? However, you need to understand, you need to be working on your presentation. And if you're talking too negatively about your company, or you're speaking very emotionally, they're going to think that those behaviors are going to repeat in a new environment. And you're going to get them thinking, okay, what really ticks this person? What really is it about them that's annoyed at their current position? And if those same behaviors repeat here, what if they want to leave straight away? So you see how now you're talking negatively about one company. It may be genuine, it may be true, but you see now how the hiring manager is going to look at that in a different light. Okay, so it's extremely important that you highlight the positives out of the situation and you focus on this, and then that gets the recruiter feeling a lot safer about you. Okay, I'll give you another story related to this situation. So I ended up getting a new job. Okay, and I'm at this new job now. And I was speaking with my colleague who was the person who hired me. And he was on the phone to somebody that he was screening for pretty much the exact same role as me, because they're trying to hire a few people for the same position as me because they're in a growing phase of the company. I said to him, how'd that screening call go? I heard you on the phone, blah, blah, blah. And he said, look, obviously he was kind of joking, but he's like, you set the bar really high. And I was like, oh, well, what do you mean? And he goes, because you just knew what you wanted. You knew what didn't work at your last company, and you knew what you wanted to do better at your new company. And for me, that just gives me so much clarity, and no one else is giving that clarity. Okay. So again, as my last environment wasn't the best for me, I didn't sit there and focus on the negatives of the company. I focused on the positives of the experience and what I want to achieve at my new company. He said to me, he goes, we knew you were a recruiter. We knew that you wanted to succeed in recruitment. So for us, that alignment was very, very easy. We knew that if we brought you in, you were going to be passionate about recruitment. It's the exact same principle here with what you could be doing, okay? You need to be taking the positives and you need to be focusing on how you can come across as passionate and as hireable as possible, okay? So what is your actionable step here? So it's quite literal, okay? I want you now to spend the time after this episode to really, really think about, why are you leaving your current company? What is it about the current company that you don't like? And what do you want in a new environment, okay? Everything. It could be from a social perspective, the work perspective, the working from home, whatever you feel like, is most important to you, outline that. And then what I want you to do is to put in a couple of dot points. What are the core things that are important to you when looking for a new company? Okay. And then once you do all of that, as a bonus exercise, if you really want to, focus on explaining your answer within a 45 to 90-second window. Okay. The more quick and effective you are with getting your point across, the more likely they're going to be able to resonate, the more likely they're going to be able to understand you, and the quicker they're going to be thinking in your head, you are the guy to help them get to that next level. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did and you're interested in working with me on a one-to-one level, click that link below for a free consultation. Happy to organize a 30-minute chat and seeing how we can align to work together moving forward. Hope you guys enjoyed again today. Take care. I'll see you guys next time.